Live now. Session starts in 0.
Cool. Awesome. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the following presentation, Indoor Mapping with the FME and Putting the Principle into Practice. My name is Darren Fergus. Those of you might have seen me a few times so far today, but for everybody that hasn't, I'm a certified professional, both server, desktop, and certified trainer. I'm joined today with Nick Morris from Access Consultants, so give him a wave. With respect to the presentations, myself, I'll be running through, what IMDF is and what FME brings to the party. And then I'm going to pass you over to Nick, who will show you some pretty cool things that you can do with IMDF. Sorry, I've just come off the back of another presentation there. With IMDF, once FME's done its thing. Right, so let's get started. So IMDF is an Apple product. It stands for Indoor Mapping Data Format. It's funny because I used to always say, it's funny, I was getting it messed up earlier, but I used to say IMDBF because if those of you that love movies and you go there for reviews, it's IMDb, right? So it's really hard to get around that kind of IMDBF and remove that, but here we are, IMDF. So just to be clear, so IMDF stands for Indoor Mapping Data Format. And just for your information, there are other indoor formats that are offered, by other, how would you say, vendors. Esri is an example. But that's outside the remit of this presentation. So we're focused solely on the Apple product. Right, so something you need to get very familiar with as we work our way through this presentation is what we refer to in IMDF is the venue, right? So if you think of places, locations, such as stadiums, museums, libraries, airports, and the likes, then yes, these would all be referred to as a venue in IMDF terms. And so, that kind of makes sense, right? So for example, if we were to carry out this, world tour event somewhere else, e.g. an actual location, not something virtually, then we would be discussing this event with our peers and colleagues as we'd be referring to as a venue, right? So, where is the venue location? What's the venue's address? What's the venue's phone number? What's the opening hours? And so on. So in a way, the terminology is nothing new, except that it's used to describe specifically the highest hierarchy within the IMDF. There are many feature types, but to simplify for the ease of explaining, it goes a little bit like this. So you've got a venue, and then you've got buildings. And, the reason I say buildings, so venue buildings, is because let's think about a hospital or perhaps a university campus, right? So if you've got a venue, that's the area, a collaboration of all, collection of all the buildings, you're going to have multiple buildings. And inside those buildings, you're going to have levels, then you're going to have units being rooms, offices, etc. And they're going to make up those levels. Then you've got amenities, doors, and like a whole lot of other feature types, which all have relationships to the units, the levels in the buildings, and they have topology. Okay, so hopefully, in summary, that kind of makes a bit of sense. So really, a venue is described in IMDF as a standardized data model that provides a generalized and comprehensive model for any indoor location. And it adheres specifically to the standards outlined in the IMDF specification. So one of the key strengths of IMDF, and there are a few of these, is that it's super lightweight in size, ensuring that it's clean, yet simple in design and easy to use, and includes obviously topology. And what's really, I'd like to say, super duper, the IMDF output is actually just a packaged bundle of GeoJSON. Now, that's pretty cool, right? And it's pretty neat for one specific reason. It makes interoperability a whole lot easier and opens up a number of use cases where the data could perhaps be used outside of the intended IMDF purpose. So, for example, other systems or applications or apps. So keep that as a little placeholder in your mind there, because Nick later on is going to cover off that little puppy and show you some cool things that you can do with IMDF, right? Lastly, the IMDF is by the Open Geospatial Consortium membership being added to the OGC standards baseline as a community standard. So just take my word for it. It's pretty cool stuff. So why do we want to use it? Yeah, let's think about that for a second. Well, in the world today, we have all, like wondrous mapping technology, right? For example, varying vector, data representing different things. You've got raster and all the different types of variations that this brings to the table. For example, elevation, other model data such as flooding, solar, or perhaps raster showing health of crops, crop management information, so you can understand what's going on. But in short, really, there are just all sorts of data available out there for users to consume from different applications. And actually, very often, much of that data is actually free. We just need to look at Google as being a perfect example of that. And that's just one of many other platforms that, there's a whole host of other platforms out there that serve data. So back on topic, why do we want to use it? Well, what is one of the most basic and fundamental reasons we utilize maps? Yeah, it's quite simple. It's to help us find our location and understand where we are relative to somewhere else, usually so we can navigate from A to B. It's that simple. So really, when you think about when you think about the amount of time we spend indoors, it totally makes sense that we want to have the ability for producing mapping data to show information on an indoor scenario. And this is not necessarily something new, right? When we're talking about indoor maps, of course, we've done stuff like this, right? For example, like a mall or, a hospital that we go to, there's some map on the inside there that provides locational information about how you get from A to B, what stairs you have to go to, what buildings you have to go on to, and so on. But there are a few complexities around that. And when you take it from having to remember how to get somewhere based on an image that you looked at, you relate that to cars. Hence, that's why we use GPS and sat nav. So we don't have to remember something. We're directed where we're going to actually go. So we're relying on technology to keep us right. And honestly, whilst I live and breathe maps and data stuff and kind of a whole host of technology related things these days, gosh, it's just amazing actually what you need to learn. I'm actually terrible at navigation. I've got like the funniest stories I could tell you on that. I mean, I'm the kind of guy that could get everybody lost looking at Google Maps, right? But that's a story for another day. So again, the question is why? Well, we spend a lot of our time indoors. We agree that, right? And ultimately, IMDF has been designed specifically to provide a basis for the easy orientation, navigation, and discovery of indoor venues like airports, shopping centers, university campuses, hospitals, stadiums, and so on. Moreover, Apple's IMDF utilizes indoor positioning for accuracy, leveraging Wi-Fi and/or beacon technology to help improve location accuracy, typically to the GPS level. And just remember, one of the reasons that indoor has been slow on the uptake to this kind of modern world, it's due to its limitations of GPS not working inside a building, right? Think about it, if you translate that into you're driving a car and you go through a tunnel, if that receiver can't access the satellites, it doesn't know where you are, right? And then you further complicate the matters by looking into how a building's structured. It's not just a specific location, it's also what level you're on, right? So there's a few things to consider when we talk about internal maps and being able to navigate our way around buildings. So if we can produce accurate location information aside of buildings, then we can do a whole heap of awesome stuff. Real-time navigation, right? Real-time mapping, dynamic location and position that allows us to do navigation, understand space management within a building, location tracking, asset tracking, event management, and so on. There's a whole host of things that I'm sure if you sat there long enough, you could think of and go, wow, this is why I want to use this. So now let's talk about building IMDF and how can we leverage FME to do this. So when we talk about building IMDF, we have a few different ways to do it. There's always a few different ways to do the same thing, but we start simple from scratch. So obviously, the more complex a project, the longer and more intensive and costly this scenario would be, right? But like with all things, there are pros and cons to everything. So if we do build from scratch, let's kind of evaluate that. So the benefits are, if done correctly, so if in that moment in time that building's been done and you understand the IMDF specification, then you're in a great position to say to the surveyors or whoever it is that's going to give you that data, right, this is what I need X, Y, Z, I want in this format, right? So it's a great opportunity and it's the best possible scenario, right? Assuming obviously you're happy to pay for the money for that. But you get that data set delivered to you when it's ready, and you use FME to turn it into IMDF, and then perhaps you go and use that IMDF because we've already said it's bundled GeoJSON to go and use for something else. However, the negatives are exactly like I just said. It's likely to be quite costly unless it's a small venue, something like Outlet City. And when I say Outlet City, that doesn't mean any relevance to now, but it's a project that we worked on, and I'll discuss that when we actually get to it. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Number two, converting existing data to IMDF using FME. Right, well, pros. Well, that seems like a really optimized method, right? If we've got the data, let's use it. So FME makes it really easy to convert and translate between one format and another. Right, so you can we have an FME workflow is actually being built for this purpose, right? So you can take and build a map, all the key components that allows you to take the data, consume the data, utilize and build the model that you require for IMDF, the spatial, the topology, the feature types, the attribution, and all the relationships as to nice and easily create that IMDF for you, and then maintain that moving forward. The negatives, though, well, not all data's built the same, right? So there are some data formats more laborious to deal with than others, e.g. CAD versus, perhaps higher quality Esri formats or BIM. And that's not even quite true, because some CAD can be really well designed and structured so that it makes sense with what you're going to use it for, right? Very often, though, the CAD that I've dealt with, loose format, it doesn't make sense, or it's no use for what we're looking to do. So whilst FME can absolutely, it's so flexible, FME, honestly, but whilst FME can be used to deal with almost all the scenarios you can think of when it comes around to dealing with data, sometimes, there's just too many scenarios you have to facilitate for, and you have to work around, and you never get 100% there. You might not even get that 98%. You might get to like a 60% and then spend months trying to get to that 80%. And even there, it's not good enough, right? So, that means that the task of doing that is kind of like, you need to understand when to make the decision. Actually, we don't want to work with this data. We're actually going to go with option number one. But really, more often than not, there's the third option, and that's a hybrid between the top one and the bottom, right? So it's I'm going to build it from scratch, and I'm going to fix it, or I'm going to put it through a workflow, and I'm going to extract everything out that I can. So data that can be cleaned up and automated by FME into IMDF could be utilized, and any of that poor data could be built from scratch or fixed manually. And look, the reason that you can get data that, some of it works okay and some it doesn't, you might be confused, because you be think, well, wait a minute, if it's one building, surely they've got all the same data. Well, no, because think about it. Animals are created during different periods. Just think of a university campus or perhaps a hospital. Data is perhaps built to different specs, or it's provided in a different format. You just need to think of something that was maybe built in the 40s or the 60s. As-built information back then was perhaps on print, not even digital, or perhaps even if it's a modern building, it's been so big, there's multiple data providers that are providing different data deliveries, and they don't have a standard specification. So the long and short of it, though, wherever the problem, using FME hugely helps to both create and update IMDF, and importantly, it can be automated. Right, so this is just now that we've kind of got there. This is just a couple of things that we worked on, or I worked on with my colleague Pip, and I'm not going to spend too much time here before I pass on to Nick. But Outlet City, so Outlet City, they're local to me. I like to support the business, the community. I like to take my technical skills and I'll be able to free offerings to the local community. And this is an IMDF that we did for them. This was an example, first example. They provided me all the CAD. It was all digital prints. I just geo-referenced them, built it completely from scratch. Didn't take too long. And we did that for these guys. The Australian Parliament building, I think we got a picture of it here. This is Australian Parliament building. I actually really love this one because they sent us an email and said, hey, look, we're really interested in IMDF. We kind of want to get it across the management team to see what they think of it. Could you how much would it be to do one floor? And I was like, Pip, we can do this. It took us about an hour and a half. We sent it over them completely free of charge because you know what? Sometimes you know, when you can do something, you want to show them how easy it is to do once you understand all the technology and what needs to happen there. We did some work on Brandenburg Airport. Now, that's a really complicated one, an example of all the multiple CAD designs that we had to deal with. And we automated it, but it was really, really hard graft. So it was a combination between automation, using FME, and also doing some manual stuff. And CTG proof of concept, way back in the day, we put a little proof of concept together for these guys, which actually Nick is going to talk about. And look, this is wonderful stuff. This is amazing stuff. And this is where you're taking technology and you're able to help people. So on that note, I'm just going to pass you over to Nick. When you're ready, Nick.
No worries. Thank you.
So if you just hit share screen, Nick. Yep.
Have you got that now?
Yep, got it. Super.
Perfect. Look, thanks for the opportunity. It's really awesome to come and present to everyone. And I think what I wanted to do was, a lot of you are going to be talking about the technology behind it. I want to talk about the people who we can influence. So, the age of 16, I was Superman in a school production. I then decided to jump on a motorbike, and I had an accident with two other guys. One got a ruptured spleen, another one got a broken ankle. I got 7 broken ribs, 3 shattered vertebrae, 2 punctured lungs, and a bruised kidney. But it opened up a world of opportunities to me. And all of a sudden, I was lucky enough to compete in the Paralympics in 1996, and we ultimately won a gold medal. But what that did was open up a whole world to me. And if we think about it, we think about all the people and the way we've evolved as a society. It's now not about disability or handicap. It's actually about universal design and sustainability, that the impact that some of this technology can have is far-reaching to the whole community. And hopefully I'll show you how we apply that. If you think about it, who in this world is normal? No one is normal. At any particular point in time, we have all these people who need additional assistance in some way. So if you think about your application, and exactly what Darren said, whether it's an airport, hospitals, schools, sports stadium, major event, or anything like that, these people attend, and potentially what they need is a little bit of guidance, a little bit of assistance to move around a space so that they can get to where they need to really efficiently. I've been lucky enough that I've worked on a number of really big events. Probably the biggest and one of the ones I'm proudest of is this here. I was lucky enough to work on the Beijing 2008 Olympic and Paralympic Games. And one of the jobs they got me to do was to create accessibility to the Great Wall of China. Now, the simple suggestion for that was that I went out there and they asked me, where do we put the Great Wall of China and the accessibility? And I said, I saw this guy with a wheelbarrow wheeling up and down to get to the Great Wall of China, where he was doing all his work on the Great Wall of China to just repair it and fix the rocks and things like that. And I said, that's where it is. That's where we need to put accessibility. And sometimes the most obvious place is the best place. But my point to this is, prior to the Great Wall of China having accessibility, no one with an accessibility need could get to the Great Wall of China and experience it. Now that it's been developed, now that there's signage, there's communication, there's all these things, all of a sudden, every weekend, they are absolutely inundated by people with accessibility needs going to the Great Wall of China. And as we get smarter, we can add communications and all the other things to that to make sure the experience is so much better. So when we talk about wayfinding and we talk about indoor mapping, why do we do it? Because all of a sudden we're talking about people and we're talking about wellness and human-centered design and ergonomics and inclusion and diversity and placemaking and all these things. But when it drills down, it is about people. So for example, you take your family to a major sporting event, and prior to even getting there, you want to know where the parents' room is so that you can take your kids and change nappies. Or you know what? Maybe you're with someone who is of gender neutral or binary disposition, and you want to know where the gender neutral toilets are. Or even simpler, you just want to know where your seat is so that you can get there simply, and by using technology, they can produce an accessible map so that you don't get taken to stairs, and you use the accessible facilities so that your journey is seamless inside and out. Very simple. So, your way. So we've created a proof of concept, which we've, and thanks to Locus, they were an integral part of it. In mapping, what we did first was a commercial building, a 4-level commercial building. And as you can see here, Your Way is a small team of people that we've brought together to create indoor mapping that links to Wi-Fi, that links to beacons and other means of movement, so that if we have a dropout, or if we want to get precise, we want to get the little blue dot to within 1 metre of a door, that we use different elements such as beacons, etc., to move around. Just to note, one of the guys in our team, David Foran, is actually a human factors engineer. When he was 25, all of a sudden his eyesight started to deteriorate. He is now a guide dog user. But I tell you, he's amazing with his movements, but without having good wayfinding technology that can talk him through the environment to get around the place, he would be lost in a lot of instances. And the bottom line is, his needs are not too dissimilar from people with non-English speaking backgrounds. They rely on pictograms or a language that can be used to give them direction. So why have we developed this Your Way technology? So what it is that we can create a seamless journey for people who have an accessibility need, so that they can scan their ticket, know where their seat is, know the pathway, be able to get there and be able to get back with ease. It's real-time information. If gate 4 is inundated with people or there's an incident, we can send messages to divert people to another gate to get in the venue, so that operationally we're really agile in the way we deliver. Decrease reliance on staff. All of a sudden you don't have to send an additional 10 staff members to the gate that's been inundated. You actually let people organise themselves. And operational responses is accuracy, so that when we have an operational portal with our wayfinding, we can make sure a number of things happen. We can effectively, as I said, divert people away from peak areas. We can create areas that maybe people don't know about, so that they can use it, because it's often obscured or difficult to find. This is one of the biggest, is that we can give messages on emergency evacuation for anyone with an accessibility need. The chances are the best action is to stay put. We can give them active messaging on their smartphone to be able to give them precise directions as to where they need to go. One of the biggest issues we have in emergency evacuation for accessibility is that quite often, to get to the lift, you're going against the flow of people. So we can make sure that through directional applications through the portal and the wayfinding and the indoor mapping format, we can give accurate information as to how to get around. And the last one is data limits. Data so that we can know where people are. So for example, we can know that there's 50 people in a venue and that not many more can fit in there, so that we can divert them around to another area, so that they can go and maybe we offer a 2-for-1 at the pub down the road, so you take away the capacity limits, or transport's gone down, or a bus has gone down at the terminal, so that all those people, rather than sending them in there to create hazards, we actually say, no, why don't you hang around and you can get a palmy and a pot for $10. I love this photo, just by the way. The reason I love this photo is because this little boy or girl's parents decided that their legs wouldn't be their limiting factor on how they get around. But like what I've been mentioning, they will be reliant on smart data. So we're working with key partners, for example, Blind Square, who really are quite amazing with what they're doing with indoor mapping. And what we're doing, 3D indoor mapping of key facilities. We can use QR codes, develop both Android and Apple applications, the portal, which is so important. So for example, if you go to a venue and we might have Sydney Football Club, we can actually embed our technology into the app that they use when they get to the venue, and they can automatically download where they need to go to get there. So that we're not a branding exercise. They wouldn't even know that Your Way was the brand behind it. Multiple languages, specific event updates, real-time positioning on Indoor Map. So we're working with Locus to really refine how indoor mapping, beacons, and Wi-Fi all work together so that we can get a really functional and safe outcome. And here's some of the partners that we've had. Proximity from Poland and Canada, they help us with the actual platform and being able to use the portal, and also using contact beacons to make sure that we're trying to incorporate all the technology we can. So what's the future? We've created one pilot. We're now in the process of developing another one in Sydney. We're really open to getting with partners who actually understand this space and can actually add value to it so that we can enhance the technology. We want to develop partnerships with people like the Hawthorn Football Club or Ticketmaster so that we develop that seamless journey so that from point A to point B and with C in the middle, we can get them done. Commercial partners as well. For example, there might be ability for grilled burgers to offer a $10 grilled if you fill in a survey or something like that. And lastly, we know there's a big wide world out there, and we're hoping to do some pilots down under before we ultimately take it to the States, because they have the massive economies of scale. Let me leave you with a thought. All technology is wonderful. There is no doubt about it. But it needs to be aspirational, like we are as humans. In Brisbane, 2032, we've got the Olympics and Paralympic Games. They are going to be held 10 years from now. If you all put your futuristic hats on and said, where are we going to be in 10 years and where would we like to be in 10 years, we want to develop that journey so that the young boy or girl that's on the left-hand side can actually fulfill their potential to be the person on the right-hand side competing for a gold medal. So thanks very much. Really enjoyed presenting, and yeah, the FME presentation by Locus is just a massive opportunity. So thanks very much.
Hey, no, thank you very much, Nick. Look, and I think, you know, it's such an amazing story, right? Me myself, I run my business. I do a lot of support, you know, for kids for cancer. You know, any opportunity for people that are vulnerable, all those different types of things. And, you know, in this industry, it's great when you meet somebody that their sole goal is to take technology and make other people's lives easier, right? And really bring awareness to those types of things. It's really quite powerful. So thank you very much, Nick, for coming and doing a presentation. Yours went a little bit better than mine because I didn't realize I had multiple messages, people telling me, Darren, you're not sharing your slides. So here's the thing. Yeah, I just came off the back of another presentation and I had a bit of an upset stomach. So I was rushing around to get onto here. And I don't know, I didn't know if I didn't hit the share button. But just before everybody goes, what I'll do is I'll bring up those slides and we'll just kind of just briefly walk you through the sort of different elements of IMDF here. So let's hit the share button this time, share screen. Gosh, it's too busy concerned making sure everybody else is okay. And here's me like kind of butchering things up, right? Is that flickering for you?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, there we go. It's coming right. So yeah, so these slides will be available to everybody, okay? And you could probably watch the video and link it up nicely with what we're talking about. But you can see here in IMDF, just it's a little bit about, you know, what is the IMDF format, the benefits of being packaged up as a GeoJSON, and just how you can go on to leverage that in other things. Let's have a look at slide 2. It's just the next thing now. I can't even change slides. So here we go. Why do we want to use it? And look, I hope that made a lot of sense, right? You know, sort of what problem are we trying to solve? You know, and I think when we think about what problem we're trying to solve, really, if you were to make it really easy to understand, you would look at what Nick did, right? You know, that creation of that application, you know, about navigation for people that wouldn't otherwise be able to either navigate, perhaps they're blind, and that's a problem. But people that need easy access, they need to understand where the lifts are. They need to make their lives easier for them, right? So, you know, it's more than just us now being able, it's certain individuals being able to navigate a way around. It's having something for everybody, right? and catering in for that. And I think that's where the, you know, technology really comes into its own. And then obviously thinking about the different types of complexes and the complexity of those complexes, or should really say buildings. Anyway, that's covered in these slides. Then there's the building IMDF, right? And I would say that definitely a consideration is, you know, when you've worked through a couple of projects, it is a big part when you get given data and you go, oh yeah, it's got lines, it's got polygons, I can totally make this work. And then actually you realize the IMDF is actually a really simple format. Right, it is very simple. You don't need to cater for double, you know, the insides of walls and outsides of walls and all those different types of things. And then you realize actually some data is just too complex, and the amount of rules that you have to put in place to make that happen, build the units, build the levels, build the buildings, and all those different types of things. It's just easier to go back to scratch and digitize off it. Or, you know, get good quality data from the start and the outset. So anyway, the information's in there. And, you know, it kind of brings us to what we've done. And I really think out of, and it's not what we've done, but what we've helped, I guess, you know, Nick be able to get on and realize is what they've done with that Your Way app. It's just a fantastic story. So apologies to everybody for my indiscretion of not sharing the slides. I really apologize for that. You know, when you put a lot of work into something and you want to really deliver a great presentation that's inspiring towards people, and you've got awesome people, you know, like Nick, that give up their time to come on, it's always a bit disappointing when things don't go right. So appreciate everybody's time here. Thanks once again, Nick, for coming on and doing this. And look, if there's anybody that's got any questions and they'd like to ask Nick about, you know, his the app that they're doing, feel free to put it in the chat there. We'll give you, you know, 20, 30 seconds to come up with that. Oh, yeah, that was a bit upsetting, Nick.
No, you did well. That's terrific. I mean, technology is about people, and we forgive you. I think just as long as your body's okay at the moment, that's all I'm worried about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny. My son, he had an upset stomach last night, so I don't know if it's that coming on or what, but you know, I mean, it's been a really busy day today. I've done been part of lots of presentations and, you know, in different ways, right? So it's been a big day for me today. So I'm pretty, you know, I like to, you know, I'm the type of person that everything I do, I like to give like 110% to, you know, there's no halfway house with me. So, you know, I like to always be able to deliver as best as possible. I think it's important, right, when you're passionate about something, you know?
Oh, it sounded all right. It sounded good when you were coming across, so don't feel that's a bad thing, mate. It's all good.
All right, we'll stop this broadcast now. And hey, look, thanks again, Nick. Really appreciate it, all right?
My pleasure. Anytime.
Thanks, mate. Bye-bye now. Cheers, guys. Bye.